Everyone in wealth management seems to be talking about AI agents, but what does it actually mean? To break it all down, I'm joined by Sova, Subatomic. Sam, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's start high level there then, and break it down for me, because again, it is a very hot topic right now to be talking about AI agents. But what's the difference in that, and why does it matter now?
Yeah, so I think agents are the natural evolution of generative AI that we're seeing. And it really allows you to, and a lot of these organizations are building it as an out-of-the-box capability to now just do more with AI in more of a skill set manner. But what we like to think about actually is we actually call them coworkers, which is a little different than AI agents. When we talk about coworkers, if we think about in the manner of hiring people, when you hire a human, you're going to train them on your operating procedures, the way you work. So we actually create AI coworkers for organizations that are very tailored to how they work, their workflows, their data, their best practices, versus just an out-of-the-box agent, which you're really starting to see come onto the scene here.
So let's get under the hood a little bit then, because when an agentic AI gets deployed, how do you actually track it? Like how are they actually getting the data? How do you track costs? What does that look like now?
Yeah, we think this is going to be one of the biggest topics, probably this time next year.
Adding it to the agenda already for next year.
We see all these conversations about token cost and things like that, right? So what we think about and what we've actually built, it's a product, I'll tell you right now, we're launching it soon publicly, called Deep Lens. It's built into our platform, and what we do is we observe everything going on with agentic AI, the data it's accessing, how it's actually getting answers, where you can check the work similar to a human. So again, we're thinking about AI coworkers. How do you check their work? You can now do this with observation through products like we offer called Deep Lens, but it also lets you know what the costs are. How are you optimizing these different large language models when you're looking at agentic AI? Again, big topic we're going to see as more deployments go ahead, and we're trying to future-proof all of our clients for this.
I love it. We got a little breaking news, so thank you for sharing. That's very exciting to hear that that's on the roadmap. But I want to go back to that point you made around cost, because we are seeing now, obviously, the tokenization of all this happen, and folks seem to be getting a bit of sticker shock. So where do you see this all headed now that firms are realizing that that is the direction things are going?
I think going with one large language model is a really risky thing to do right now. We talk about this a lot with our clients. Just think about like Uber, right? 5-6 years ago, I took an Uber to the airport, it was $20. I went yesterday, it was $75. Why is that? Well, you're hooked, right? They got the user base and you're hooked, and now you're used to using this. I think we're going to see this with tokenization, and the advice I always give is find a provider to work with that isn't tied to one large language model. So at Subatomic, we're actually LLM-agnostic, which means we're actually optimizing the answers that we get in the work that our agentic team does based on what is going to get the best outcome for the least amount of cost, which is extremely important as we think about the trend that may happen where costs go up because of tokens.
All right, so don't put all of your tokens in one basket is what you're saying a little bit there, because I think that's interesting, because people seem to get attached to one model, but don't think about how you should probably be able to diversify and utilize all the various models. So I think that's a great point, and the number one question that folks should be asking when they do their due diligence at this point. So great point you make there. Another point you've actually made too is you said that firms winning with AI aren't the ones buying necessarily like the flashiest tools, right? Which I think is a completely fair statement. They're the ones who got their data right first. And this is certainly a drum I've been beating for a while. You've heard the term garbage in, garbage out. It starts there. But it seems like a lot of folks are still skipping that step a little bit. What happens when they do?
Well, it's not the sexiest thing to do, right? Like, everybody wants to deploy the features and get the outputs, but if you don't start with your data, you're just kind of handcuffing yourself. So the firms that have started with data are the ones that are actually getting that unified view of a customer or a client, and they're able to then knock off all these use cases and pain points because they've done the work with the data. And now they can deploy agentic AI. So some of our earliest customers now are just hitting use case after use case after use case and actually transforming their entire organization because they did the data work first, and now they're getting to outcomes. and they're going to get ahead of everybody fast when it comes to growth and servicing clients and so on.
I've been saying that all along too. If you don't have your data in a good place, you can't even begin to dabble with AI,
Right.
let alone have agents or coworkers or anything like that. So it really starts at that foundational level of the data.
But I want to double click on like what that really means, because there's a lot of different ways of like that organizations are talking about doing that data work. So like one way is like API connections, which like that's kind of surface level. What we think about, it's called the Medallion architecture. I won't get too nerdy. I think you and I have talked about this before. But basically what we're trying to do is take all that structured and unstructured data, so custodial information to emails, note takers, and normalize it. So the best way of thinking about this is like in a custodial platform, I could be Samuel, I could be Sam in a note taker, I could be Sammy in an email, and if you're not doing the deep data work, AI isn't going to recognize that's the same person. So you really have to think about how do we contextualize this, normalize it, so our AI now that we deploy actually knows that that's the same individual.
All right, well, folks listening, take note of that one, certainly. And it seems like a lot of RIAs are actually still thinking about AI as a tech stack decision, which platform, which vendor, which, seat license, but you're telling them to think about it as really an organizational chart instead. Walk us through that and unpack that for me.
Yeah, so if you think about like how we've bought software, it's point solutions based on a need, and what has that, every organization we talk to, what has that gotten them? We call it a Frankenstack. All these tools that don't talk to each other. And now we're essentially, a lot of organizations are doing the same thing with AI. It's just a better software platform. We actually think the unlock here is think of it as a hiring decision. And when you do that, you're completely transforming how you think about technology. So if it's a hiring decision, again, you're training them on your tools, on your data, your SOPs and so on. And now you can actually almost have it like an org chart instead of a tech stack. So you have a chief of staff, we call, that is orchestrating all these AI coworkers in the background to do meeting prep, text planning. The list goes on and on and on, what we can do now with AI coworkers, and they learn over time. They have that cognition and can work together to now completely transform your organization. So we see this as the future. We also see the communications as agnostic. So like think about like software. When you buy software, you have to get trained and conform to how that was built by whoever your vendor is. We think now with AI coworkers, you can access your AI via text, chat, email, however you individually like to work. You can work with AI versus conforming to a platform.
Well, Sam, you've dropped a ton of knowledge and advice in this chat, but I want one more takeaway for listeners. What's one question that RIA principals should be asking their operational leaders?
Are you going to continue to buy software and tools, or are you going to hire AI? That's what I would ask.
I think that's the perfect question to ask. So Sam, as always, it's a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your insights.
Yeah, great talking to you again. Thanks.
For Wealth Management, I'm Shannon Rossick.